Hello, and welcome to the Quantum Fit Podcast. I'm Taylor, and I am your host. This podcast is all about applying the different principles of quantum physics and quantum biology to your health and fitness. This gives us a holistic view of how different environmental factors, such as sunlight or cold, play a major role in your overall health. So I won't just be talking about diet or exercise and developing good habits. If you want to really make lasting changes in how you feel, think, and act, then I'd recommend you try to listen closely and have an open mind to what I have to say. Every day I'll be hitting you with a quick 7 to 15 minute long podcast. I keep it short like this because it makes it both informative and to the point so that you don't feel quite so overwhelmed with information. Also, currently I do not do any kind of advertisements. So instead, I ask that you share this podcast with a friend or family member if you enjoyed the message and gained something from it. I want to be able to spread quality and easy to understand content that everyone can take and use in their own daily lives. I would highly appreciate it. On to today's episode. Focus on the fundamentals. Today I want to talk more about this podcast's goal of providing health information to the average person. Right now I have this goal built into the introduction to every episode, so I'm sure you've heard it a million times by now. But I've never fully elaborated on what I want that to actually look like. I think it's important for me to go over it since I feel like people are getting tripped up easily listening to some of the episodes. So, for instance, the biggest issue that I hear is episodes can be really, they're really science heavy and can be really hard to grasp. The concepts are tricky, they're complex. Or the vocabulary I choose to use can be too big or complex as well. And I totally understand it, and I don't think anyone is really complaining about it as a problem per se. But I have been asked on more than one occasion as to how I know what I know about these, science-heavy, complex things. The only reason I'm able to keep up with any of this material is through constant exposure. I don't have a medical or scientific background, aside from taking engineering courses in high school. But, that doesn't count. I didn't really do anything that was biomedical or, I took a biology class senior year, but, that doesn't count. No, it's just through treating, through constant studying and treating it basically like a job for 7 years now, since I was 17 or so. And that's not meant to be taken as me bragging about it. It's just to demonstrate the point that this kind of material is hard work. You have to bust your ass to truly understand it. Even if, you're regularly getting gold nuggets of knowledge fed to you through, me or whoever else you may listen to or read from. And the main reason for this comes back to dopamine, one of my first episodes. If you're jumping into all of this, jumping into all the new podcasts, whether you're a newcomer or even you've listened to a few episodes already, there's probably a decent chance you have low or on the lower end of dopamine, which is going to make it really hard to grasp the material. And that's just the way it is. I mean, hell, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I'm also still low dopamine. Much, much better than I used to be, but I still have huge potential for improvement. I'm nowhere near optimal. And as you increase dopamine levels, it becomes easier to see from different perspectives and be capable of connecting dots you never could before. The material suddenly starts to make perfect sense. And that's what happened to me over time, fixing my environment, actually eating right. I mean, I've gone through a whole, like every freaking diet, tried it all. Vegan, I definitely did the worst on. I think I was pretty much just having vegan smoothies. I think I did that for like, 6 months. After that is actually when I went full carnivore, so I kind of went a full 180 there. But that's when a lot of the stuff I had been reading suddenly started connected because my environment got better and better. And that was also the summer I went and finally did lots and lots of sun exposure. And things really started to change. My dopamine levels started to surge. I mean, I could just tell. I just feel better, sleep better. Critical thinking is better. Everything just kept ramping up. And, that's just kind of the way it is. So until, it's... In order to get to that point where things start to make sense, the concepts I talk about, in order to get to that point, you need to start applying the basic stuff. Eat lots of seafood and meat while also tying your carbs to what's available in your local area. Get that morning sun and block that evening and especially nighttime blue light. Wear ice packs or take cold baths regularly to get that cold exposure. Buy a Magnetico, sleeping, well, it's not a sleeping, I guess a pad, whatever, it's a magnetic pad that you put under your bed, or right under your mattress. That'll give you really, really good sleep. Buy or get a membership to a quality low EMF sauna. Build some heat shock proteins. That's another way. So, apologize for that. There was some loud sounds that were happening outside my apartment. So, continuing. The whole point of the podcast is to explain the details and mechanisms of why and how things work. But don't get hung up on those, little details. It'll drive you nuts trying to understand everything in such a short time. Just take the basics away from episodes. Like knowing that cold is good for you and there's, quantum and biochemical reasons for it. That's it. That's really all you have to take away, Is it required that you know the names of all of the biochemicals or that you always remember cold increases semiconduction within cells? No. I never expect anyone to unless they're like a super nerd like I am for this stuff. And you're constantly reading about it and stuff. Then you're getting that constant exposure to it. So, yeah, you're going to start remembering it. But otherwise, much more likely you're going to forget things. So that's why you need to focus on the basics. And again, realistically, I expect everyone to forget over and over again the different things they learn through this podcast. That's why the episodes are short and dense, so that you can jump right back in if you forget something and want a refresher. I myself forget plenty of the details too, which is part of the reason I do the podcast. Repeated exposure helps consolidate memory, so got to take full advantage of it. So, once again, today this podcast is definitely different. I hope you enjoyed it. Not really any mind-blowing information today, but it should serve as a good reminder to take things easy. Don't stress too hard about not knowing everything and not being able to do everything today. Oh my God, I'm not getting as much sun exposure as I should be. Neither am I, and I work in a hospital. We have the absolute worst blue lighting possible. I mean, I wear blue blocking glasses, but it's still hitting my skin all the time. There's Wi-Fi outputters, whatever. Wi-Fi boxes, I guess. Every, couple 100 feet or so? So you have constant max signal throughout the whole hospital. So I'm just bathing in EMF and blue light constantly. But I do what I can outside of it, so you can't be stressing it. And again, it's I forget details all the time, so don't worry about them. Just take baby steps forward and you'll begin, you begin an upward spiral. I talked about with dopamine. When you increase dopamine, you'll naturally want to do things to keep increasing your dopamine levels. And so long as you keep making those little baby steps, eventually everything on the podcast and, well, everything else in your life overall will, eventually things will suddenly click and you'll see the pieces fall into place. Things will start to make sense, again, because dopamine levels will increase, and just because you'll get enough exposure or whatever to the material, you'll suddenly understand things. So don't worry if you don't understand all of the heavy science, the, sometimes overly complicated concepts. Just take away what you can and, take advantage of it, utilize it, as best as you can. If you can only do a little bit, just do a little bit. That's fine. Every little bit is going to make a big difference. I've talked about that before. Quantum difference when you utilize quantum, interventions to your health. So even just little bits make huge exponential increases in your health. All right, well, that's enough of that. So if you have any questions and comments, you can find me on Instagram at Real Quantum Fit, the Quantum Fit Facebook page, my personal Facebook page, Taylor Kelson, or through a voice message across the Anchor app. See ya!